All right, hello and welcome to the Patreon live broadcast on today, Sunday the 6th of August. Just going to pan the camera up a little bit. There we go, that's probably better. So, thanks to all patrons, new and old. And obviously most of my projects wouldn't happen at all without Patreon, so there we go. So we're going to basically talk about some of the projects today, some of the projects that have you've already seen, and some new projects that you haven't seen, although there's been some previews on my wall for patrons only. I'm trying to put something on the wall every day for patrons if I can, or at least maybe 5 days a week. We're going to talk about the thing I was riding on, which I mentioned in the last live broadcast, and that's a really long-term project, and some other bits and pieces. There's been a few questions as well, so we'll try and answer those. So hopefully everyone's got the chat open. If you're trying to view the embedded video on Patreon, then make sure you open the link in a new window, because there's a chat window which I will be having a look at every so often to answer any questions. And if there's anything you want to have a closer look at, then please tell me. So there we go. I've also got some events coming up sort of in the next couple of months, which I'm going to tell you about those as well. So there we go. So not sure if I'm looking a bit pink today. I've been out in the sun all day. In fact, it's been relatively sunny. And I've been with the Mantis robot, which has been in my channel before. It's Matt Denton's giant hexapod. In fact, I'm going to just show you a picture. If you haven't been watching my Instagram, let's just switch over to screen share. Oops, there we go. So the giant hexapod hydraulic robot powered by a turbo diesel engine. And the reason for doing that was because I'm going to be at Maker Faire Hanover at the end of this month, which is the August hang on, something like the 25th through the 27th, I think it is, but have a look at the website if you're in Germany. I think the first day is for students only, but we'll be there all 3 days, hopefully doing 4 to 5 Mantis robot demos a day. So that's pretty much, we're driving out there, so it's going to be a week-long trip pretty much from Thursday to Monday. So there won't be any other videos that week, because that's pretty much a week of my time gone, but I'm going to try and make 3 videos about going there. Some 360 video using my 360 camera again that I've still got here. So we're going to be hopefully sticking that on the roof of the Mantis so you can look all around and see all of its legs moving. Those videos are not going to be billed to patrons because the trip is already funded by Matt and the Mantis, and mainly I'm there as a kind of helper and for safety to make sure I can shout stop if a child runs under the legs. But obviously you'll have a look around Maker Faire, and we'll hopefully do some video about that as well. So it's going to be a bit of a more diverse anyway from the normal video that week, or at least the week after when I've come back and edited it. So yeah, there we go. So I'm going to right, let's talk about the hoverbike simulator, which I've got here. So that's a long-term project. Let's start with that. So last time, if you were watching in sort of last month's live broadcast, I had one axis of this thing working. So this is basically a project that I'm doing for Portsmouth University called RIGPER, which stands for Real-Time Interactive Group Project. And basically, it's a project where they work with industry, and I'm the industry for this one. And my understanding is there's various categories depending on how capable the students are, where like the top category is the Royal Navy or someone like that, where they're almost guaranteed a job at the end. The next step down is where I am, apparently, which is something pretty cool that's good to put on their CV. And then the last two categories are for people who aren't that good and they do something internally, apparently. So yes, so the plan is to do a virtual reality game, and they're going to do all of the game design, all of the graphics and all of the stuff, and my job is to build and sponsor this hardware. So this is going to be a video series coming up. We're not quite finished yet, but we've got the 2-axis, and it's going to have a Vive tracker on it, which looks like this, which tracks it into virtual reality, so they'll be fixed on the front somewhere, and that will allow the whole thing to be tracked. So when you're riding on it, you can look down and it moves when you lean, and that also controls it. So there are going to be some other features as well. So I've got these side pieces fixed on now, and there's going to be some rather industrial foot switches on each side. So you've got 2 foot switches, one on each side, and I've also got handlebars which are due to have some extra buttons on. But for now I've got brake levers, and there'll be another button you press as well, and those all of those things can be attached to the Vive tracker. So in the bottom it's got a bunch of pins, and they basically well, you can just attach switches, and it basically believes it's a Vive handset. So I can attach the brake pedals to the trigger, and I can attach the top clicky button to another button on the handlebars, and then the paddles on the side can be attached to the foot switches. And all of that can be brought into the game, so that basically you can steer by pushing the paddles either side, and use the brakes, or that could be like power boost or whatever they decide to program. Hopefully we're going to publish all the plans for this, and the results should be in the end that we have something we can publish and other people will be able to build it. And then hopefully we're going to publish all the game assets. Hopefully the project will go okay. And then there'll be, a Unity project that you can put the whole thing back together, hopefully. So we're going to try and open source it as much as possible. Obviously, what I care about mostly is the video series. Looking cool, and they're looking like a fun game and a thing that people want to watch. But I believe the university is still going to judge the students on how well they make the game. So even if it's really buggy and we can only make it work once or twice, the series will look all right, but obviously they still won't get good marks. So hopefully all round it should be pretty cool. And the game is going to be basically hover bikes flying through the forest shooting men in white armor, not Star Wars. So there we go. So that's what that's all about. The timescale is this goes to Portsmouth Uni at the end of September, and they work on it till March. So I don't know when the videos are coming out. I'd least like them to have done something before part 1 goes out. Part 1 and 2 are making it and taking it there. And part 1 is finished already, which is what you see here. So that's kind of a long-term project. I wanted to talk a bit more about the Lego skateboard and the next board projects, which I've you've seen the pictures on the Patreon wall for basically for patrons only for the bat board. So I'm going to look at the parts for that. I've got a fair way with it so far. So yeah, Lego Skateboard seems to have been a pretty popular series. I'm trying to do more sort of shorter, punchier series, as well as the ongoing ones like Robot X. The board is, of course, down here. Let's just point the camera down a little bit if I can. Oh, here we go. That works. So it's still all in one piece, which is a bit miraculous. What did happen though, right at the end of the testing, was that one of the front wheels actually did break. So my Ninjaflex tyres have been really good. They're all perfectly in one piece, as well as the back ones. They haven't, I mean, they're a bit scuffed, but you can still see the build lines on them. So they're not, they're still definitely, there's no delamination, but the PLA hub broke in one completely in half. I don't know when it broke, but obviously it was running with the sort of pressure on the bearings. So it carried on going, but then I tried to drive on rough ground. I was going to do one more bit of video of the camera on the ground and me going past with the lights on it when it came to the end of the filming. but then I noticed the wheel had started to fall to pieces. So they stood up fairly well, though, to several miles of testing. I think I probably did maybe 3 to 4 miles in all of that test video on them. So I've now replaced them with, they're in fact 3D printed wheels again, but they're printed in NinjaFlex SemiFlex, which is now called NinjaFlex Cheetah, which is a sort of semi-flexible material, so they feel like plastic skateboard wheels, but they should take the load a bit better. I guess it's not ideal because the wheels on the front are so small, so starting on rough ground is practically impossible without pushing off. And also, if there's like a twig or something in front of the wheel, you can't, it just won't go until you push or make sure on really smooth ground. But once it's going, it goes pretty well. So one of the things about the new board is it's got really big front wheels as well. So there we go. Steering, yeah, as I mentioned, could have been better. I've got some reverse kingpin trucks, but they don't really fit properly. I'll maybe use those for another project, but not the next one because it hasn't got skateboard wheels on the front. But apart from that, it's pretty good. The batteries lasted pretty well. We put 2 5 amp hour 11.1 volt lipos in, and they only dropped a volt each, which was pretty good. So I probably could have done maybe, I think, probably 6 miles on a set of batteries. And of course, we could just build another battery brick and double up, and that would probably be fine. So there we go. Good. Let's talk about the next board, and I'm just going to grab the pieces and start laying them out. And you've probably seen some CAD that was on my Patreon wall, and I'm just going to check the broadcast is running still, which I think it is. It is running. Good. If there's any questions, throw them in the chat. I know there's a few here. Yeah, the red brake levers. Yeah, I'm trying to make it red, the hover bike. This is the red and black. It's got red Morstruder prints in it as well, because I've got lots of red filament. Right, where are my bits of backboard? So obviously I've started the video series. And this is 12mm plywood. Hopefully you'll get all of this in shot. So that's basically the standing area. Let me grab the other bits and pieces. We've got 2 front forks that hold the wheels, and these are made of 50 by 25mm box section steel, because they cannot twist, because the wheels come in there, and if they twist, then it won't work properly and it'll be terrible. And then I thought about these not being steel, but it might as well be all the same thickness. It's going to be a slightly heavier board, but it is having more motors, more higher power motors, in fact, one on each back wheel. So that's that. And then, so this is actually upside down. I'd be standing on the other side, and this is the bottom. And we're going to sandwich the steel between that and some more plywood and bolt it all through to try and hold these stiff. So it's a fairly okay standing size. You should just move the camera around the side there. There we go. And I've also printed hubs for the back wheels, which go approximately there and there. Somewhere. And also the front wheels. Now these are mounted on go-kart stub axles, which normally, they have a pivot point, and then you'd normally have that thing would be the leverage for the steering, but they're going to have to face forwards, and that will actually be fitted to the steel on each side. So there's my 2 front wheels. Something like that. I need to get an angle grinder and take it to that steel and unfold it to allow the stub axles to fit. So I do actually have metalworking tools like an angle grinder. So we're going to cut the steel open and unfold to make 2 flat things to put the stub axle on is the plan. Let's put that away. And then hopefully the wheels are push and pulled from the axis in the middle here to pull it round. And that's going to push and pull through the middle of the sandwich. And in fact, what I'm going to do is have motorized steering. So there's going to be a pusher and a puller. which is probably a big sprocket in the middle somewhere, or at least a big pulley with two links that go there, and then that pulley is going to be driven by a motor, which is probably a wiper motor, which will sit at the back somewhere with a little sprocket on it going to the big pulley, so I get lots of leverage, and it's going to have electric steering. So the last board, obviously, I had to lean to steer, which I've now put the controller down somewhere. There it is. So the only control on the last one was the trigger, and the lights for that one. But obviously the steering wheel's still there, so I'm actually going to have steering on this that's radio controlled. So it means I can drive it around like a radio controlled car and jump on when I want to be Batman and go around on it, which is I think what Batman would do probably. So, you know, having the sort of autonomous mode. The only challenge is having to have two hands on this for steering, which means I can't hold a selfie stick. But we'll approach that. We may hack the controller so it's got another thumb thing for steering maybe, or you tilt it like this for steering. I'm not sure what I want out of it yet. We could have another board on top that leans, but it'd have to be quite high because it's quite wide, and that could pull cables to operate the steering. But I think I actually want active electric steering. I could put pressure pads on or something as well that activates the electric motor. But for now, we're just going to make it remote controlled because why not? So yeah, hopefully, I'm not sure when part 1 is going to be out. I need to cut this steel and get a significant amount bolted together. Each bat wheel is going to have a motor this time. I've already got the 3D printed T5 pulley on there. Obviously, these have got bearings in. These are more Struder prints. There's about 1.2 kilograms in each one. And I've still got to print the tyres, which are like double tyres. Which are around, it's about 700 grams of Ninjaflex on each one, so nearly a whole roll of Ninjaflex on each bat wheel again, which is pretty much the same as the Lego skateboard. So, and the front tyres, of course, as well this time, which is about another, I think, 400 grams on each one or something. So yeah, a fair amount of printing to do. And then the motors are going to be obviously a motor on each bat wheel, which is going to be slightly slower and higher torque and higher power than the single one on the skateboard. So hopefully it's a bit more off-road. It will go on rougher ground with the bigger wheels, and it should work from a standing start. So that's the progress on that so far. All right, there's some questions. Let's see. Just put the camera back. This camera's quite wide angle, but it's quite far away from me, and I can't tell who's in shot, whether I'm in shot. I'm in shot. Right, Bender, he's looking googly-eyed. Yes, he is a bit. He's probably just going to stay there as an ornament for the near future, although it would be quite good to have an animatronic head I could power up sometimes. Maybe he should look around in the background and see who notices. Yes, the single pebble would send me flying. It wasn't too bad on the Lego skateboard once I got going, but it was on the rough ground, like in the part 2 of testing. That car park's really rough, but it was really hard to get up to any speed at all, and it was a real bone shaker. But not as much as with the original skateboard wheels that were totally solid, which is where I got the truck from, which is a really cheap skateboard. That was really awful on all ground, which is why I basically printed wheels. The angle grinder, no, I won't be using it indoors to cut steel. I'll be going in my garden. I don't have a shed or any type of outbuilding, though. I could also go to the local Southampton makerspace and do it there, probably. But we'll see how we get on outside. Yes, so the hubs are PLA. They're PLA with the Lulzbot Moore Struder, and they are 3 perimeters with a 1.2mm nozzle and about 20% infill. But obviously, all the infill is really tough as well. They're actually in 2 halves. You'll notice the different color filament. So the grey is one half and the red and black is the other half. It was supposed to be black on the side you see and red in the middle, like the back ones, because I've got more red filaments. But I did it the wrong way around on the front ones. And that's because the wheel bearing on the front stub axle is actually inside in the red part, and the grey part's just got this bolt for pushing and pulling. So yeah, it's about 1.5 kilograms in these, I think, as well, which is a fair amount. And they seem incredibly tough. Bearing in mind the bat wheels of the Lego skateboard, the hubs are 3D printed with a normal extruder, and the Moore Struder makes really tough parts because the layer bonding is really good. Then hopefully they'll be absolutely fine. So there we go. But yeah, it's all PLA, so the parts don't warp. You can't do much else. I guess Pet G. Yes, I should wear a helmet on this one. I probably won't for testing, but the eventual aim, hopefully, is to do a Batman cosplay, which is going to be 3D printed in a lot of NinjaFlex and other black and grey material, and hopefully we'll have an entire downloadable Batman, at least the armor sections that go onto a fabric suit, so I'll have a fair amount of protection. Obviously, the NinjaFlex is pretty tough, so it'll be like wearing armor. Head protection, not so much. I'm not sure what to do about the cowl yet, but something definitely. Does it come in black? The what? The filament? Or... So basically these are black and red. I swapped filament because I had loads of cheap red. I would have done them all in black, but you won't see it anyway because it's covered with the tyre. So yes, if that's the question. Pet G, yeah. Could have done. I had loads of cheap PLA. I think it'll be fine. Right, a 1/6 scale 3D printed remote control ATST would be pretty cool. Yeah, so there was actually a large ATAT build going on that I'm building with someone else, but that's on hold sort of at the moment because the other person's really busy. That was supposed to be done for Star Wars, but I don't think it's going to be. It was about 2 meters tall and something like that. Nothing at all has happened on that. Eventually we'll pick it up again, but yep. Two-legged walking will be quite hard though. Depends how big it is. 1/6 scale. Yeah, possibly. But I've got quite a lot of projects on at the moment, so there we go. Where did you get your camera mount, steady mount thing to film the Lego skateboard? So the last testing is just a GoPro on a selfie stick. The episode 2 with this thing, this is it's made of several things. This is just a cheap camera bracket that you get from eBay for about £10. It's made of plastic. The actual other handle and the beam is made from a camera cage that I don't use very much, which is a Film City one. And then there's a 3D printed clamp that holds it and is screwed onto the base. So I've basically got, yeah, 2 hands or an extreme selfie stick. But in the final testing, I actually used just a normal GoPro selfie stick with a GoPro, and that's all it was. So there we go. Right. Yes, the multicolor print on the hubs. It's just basically I swapped filament to use up all the red cheap filament I had, and then did black on the ends by swapping back again by pausing it and changing the filament. So it's more than a roll of filament in there. It's 1.2 or 1.5 kilograms or something. So I used an entire roll of red in the middle, basically, which I got for £6.79 because Lolspot had a sale on it. And the black is, I've got less black and more red, so I just wanted to use it up. Yeah, so return to cosplay. Well, I'm trying to do more sort of visually pleasing projects. I mean, I like doing robotics, but obviously since I've done robotics, views have dropped off a bit. Now Hulkbuster is finished, so I really like to make a return to some, you know, more visually pleasing things, and that seems do a themed skateboard and a themed character. At some point, I'll probably get the Iron Man suit back out and do an Iron Man skateboard. But we'll have to see. That's obviously long term. So yeah, it'd be good to have a lot of 3D printed parts. So yes, slightly different approach to cosplay, I guess, although people are doing it. But actually being able to 3D print it and wear it will be a good thing. So yeah, I just wanted to mention the legalities of electric skateboards in the UK, which is they're not legal to use on the public highway, which includes the pavement. So in testing part 2, that car park is owned by the rugby club, which is private property, so that's fine. In part 3, I was on a cycle track, which is dual-use pedestrians and cyclists, which technically is council-owned, so it's owned by the government, and it's not actually, well, you shouldn't really ride on it with an electric vehicle because we don't have a category for electric vehicles which aren't an electric car that's licensed and so on. So the only thing that comes close is a power assist bicycle, but it can't be more than 250 watts, and it's supposed to only assist you when you're pedaling. So even those balancing hoverboards and any electric scooters, you can't actually use on the road or on the pavement legally. The nighttime scenes were shot next to a skate park, so I didn't think anyone would complain about a skateboard next to a skate park, basically. There's also a police station quite nearby, but I didn't get any complaints. Anyone I stopped to speak to is more interested in what it was, you know, and so on. So hopefully the Batboard can go off-road a bit more, so that second episode, the car park, I can test it in there legally. and hopefully go round in tighter circles, or I can find some other car park owned by a supermarket or something that's not the public highway. But actually, it's not much use for going anywhere because you can't go between places without it being illegal, basically, which I believe in the Netherlands you can have an electric vehicle up to 24 kilometers an hour in the cycle lane. It's a video of someone on an electric like cooler, it looks like, racing along. But yeah, the UK's not got a category, so it's automatically illegal, which is good. Right. Okay, what's this? Get a super sneaky like the tour. I'm not quite sure what that sentence means. But anyway, let's move on. So that's all of that. Yes. So, right. Oh, the other thing that you've seen the preview for is the potentially fighting robots project. So I'm going to turn the camera around and grab this huge thing here. Without knocking Spider-Man over. Pull this forward a bit. So I thought I'd experiment with pneumatics. There we go. How's that? Is that in shot? Not really. Let's have some more light. How's that? Oh, I can just about see it, I think. Right, so I thought I'd experiment with pneumatics, and I mentioned a while ago about using essentially foot pumps. I hope that's the wrong way. Foot pumps as pneumatic cylinders. Right, that's the best I can get. So we've got basically this arm that I've built, which has got 1, 2, 3 foot pumps that can move it all around in all axes, sort of, and it can twist this way as well. So it's actually attached at the top with bungee cord, and we've got some ball joints which are kind of like fairly hacky, and they're quite loose actually. If you can see that coming out, let's just see if I can get closer on that. So not tight in there at all. Could do with more of a cup really to kind of attach it, but it can twist and it can punch and it can use them all in different combinations to move around. So it's sort of a one-off episode to see if I could do this. We've got some solenoid valves and just basically switches that operate the valves. I got an air compressor, which was £100 to buy, but actually lipos are pretty expensive. So the plan will be, of course, to have, we've got sort of half a body here, but we'd have 2 arms, and then we'd have some sort of wheeled base, and then we'd hopefully take them to sci-fi shows and stuff. They could perhaps be themed up as Terminator or Batman or whatever, and then the public can have a go and fight them. Obviously, there'd be a sort of override for safety and a cordon and all sorts of things. And then hopefully, like, you know, you can punch the head off, or detachable panels, maybe scoring pads, and there'd be some sort of winner there. And we probably have to have them tethered because of the pneumatics and the amount of air each cylinder uses every time it punches. So we'd have to have a compressor attached to each one, and then some sort of kind of relay for cutoff that cuts off all of the valves and cuts off the steering, probably with some fairly chunky motors. It'd be good if they had a torso cylinder so they could duck and dive and punch. And they'd probably be sort of this height, so 6 to 7 feet, characters on big wheel bases. Probably put a car battery in the bottom of each one or something like that. I'm just going to grab the camera and try and move it around a bit more, see if that gives you any better idea of what's going on. It's pretty tight up this end. Hopefully you can see the cylinder at the back. It makes a great pneumatic fighting sound as well. And you don't need much pressure actually to make these work. So about 2 bar or 2 to 3 bar, which I think is about 30 psi. So it packs a fair punch though. So you could actually have a fairly satisfying robot fight, a bit like real steel in real life. But I really like something the public can have a go on. So they'd have basically really simple controls for driving, and probably nothing much more than, you know, the 3 buttons I've got here for each arm for 3 different types of punches, basically. And then they just sort of thrash each other, and we'll see what happens. So these things are all on bungees, which does mean you could punch an arm off, or you can lose a ball joint, and kind of that axis doesn't work anymore if it pops out, you know. So seems quite a good way to make them compliant. It means they don't break easily, and they can always be sprung back together. So it means maintenance is quite easy. Again, the thing there is only on a bungee, bungeed into a kind of a C bracket there. So you could actually have them fall to pieces, or you could knock arms off, or whatever could happen, and then we could put them back together. So it's not something I think I'm going to do right now, purely because I don't have that much time. It may happen later this year. I might make, obviously I'd have to make a pair of them and the wheeled base. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm going to put out one episode about the pneumatics. Obviously there's some innovation in using the foot pumps as pneumatic cylinders because they're really cheap, which so hopefully that's interesting to some people. It's kind of an experiment really, but hopefully it's something we'll pick up in the future. I don't really want to do too many other pneumatic projects because without proportional valves, it's quite hard to actually position them anywhere. Plus the hassle of the valves, air leaks, the compressor, which is really noisy. So I think I'll stick to motors for most projects. But there we go. So let me just quickly have a look at the chat and see where we are. Right, filament sponsored by the Filament Company is an interesting one. I'm doing a world record attempt, which is a bit delayed. It starts next week for the largest 3D printed sculpture of a human, and that is sponsored. The original filament sponsors had some production issues, so it's now sponsored by 3D Filaprint, and they are in fact shipping me all of the filament for free. But that's mainly because it's in the Guinness World of Records. So the challenges with any other filament sponsor is kind of declaring product placement in every video, which is a bit of a challenge under UK law. So there are ways around it, like they could say that it's, you know, true sponsorship, but it's not product placement, but it'll be very hard to kind of name them in every one. So yeah, I mean, specific projects could be sponsored, but I'm not going to do it as an ongoing thing. Yeah, the organic movement is quite good because it's a bit like muscles, and it does kind of hook and everything when you use those pneumatics. So yeah, it's not quite as smooth in when it's actually in use, but there you go. Robot Combat League. Yeah, there is that thing. Yeah, they've got kind of, they like walk, don't they? And they've got a big T-piece behind to stop them falling over. I considered walking legs for it, but I don't really want another walking thing right now. Yeah, so they are single acting. You pump air in, they shoot out. That's it, with a spring return. So you can't adjust pressure on either side to hold them, you know, adjust them accurately in a position. So that's it basically. But for punching forward, it's fine really. And if it were the body movement, I'd have one on each side and a thing that springs it in the middle. That'd probably work quite well. But yeah, Rock'em Sock'em Robots, that's what I'm thinking of. Let humans fight it. I could put a boxing glove on, but then if the person punched the robot, I don't know, they'd probably be more accurate and dexterous than the robot, so it wouldn't be fair. Right. Okay. Yeah, so the idea of it breaking down, yeah, I'd like fly off panels as well, and some sort of like pads you hit and the score comes up. Also, you'd have health and energy. So obviously pneumatic compressor can't run all, well, it could run all the time, but you probably use more air than it can generate. So there'll be like an energy meter. So you have to be strategic with the fighting. So you, to maintain the air pressure and the energy level, you don't punch too often. So you could have defensive moves perhaps that don't use so much energy. So there's all sorts of things we could do there. Yes, quiet air compressors. That one is, I think, it's a 24-litre tank and something in the region of, blah, 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 I don't know, it's written on it somewhere. It's something like 60 litres a minute, I think, maybe more, but it is really noisy. CO2 maybe, but I'd have to charge the CO2. At some point it would, I mean, those cylinders are quite big, so they would deplete the air quite quickly. I guess you could have an aqua lung on every one or something, but I don't know, it'd be good to be able to run it all day and just use the air compressors plugged into outlet power. So, right, so that's that. As I say, video coming up this month, probably in a week or so. Be a Friday video, that one. The exosuit is ongoing, and I haven't, obviously the video about the redesign comes out Tuesday for everyone else. I'll be starting the actual build next week out of the smallest box section steel I can get that looks good, and plywood, I think, is the conclusion, and doing more development on the pressure pads and the motor control as I go. Not too much more to be said about that, I don't think. So I just wanted to quickly show you what's going on with Iron Spider-Man. So that's for the week after, so patrons will get that next week. I've posted some CAD, and basically the plan is to build some sort of working web shooter, and I'm still working on it. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. Let me just get this robot arm out of the way. All right, so let's try and get some distance on that. So you'll notice I've got two hands on the bench here, and one is much bigger than the other. So one is the first go, and then I decided it was far too big. The plan was to have extra big hands on Spider-Man the robot, because his feet are pretty big and his head's pretty big. So it's sort of like a caricature, or some sort of stylized thing, but actually they're really far too big and they got really heavy. So I basically skinnied it down and reprinted all the parts overnight. So this is the version 2 hand, and it's got this animatronic thing, so it can do, just take these loose pieces out. It's got a servo on the back, a little servo on this one, so it can kind of do the Spider-Man, web shooting pose. The fingers don't quite touch, but there'll be a pad which would be the web shooting trigger. And then I've got a spring which came out of the old snake in a pot trick, where you open it and the snake shoots out. And that spring is going to go on this piece, which is basically a cylinder that it gets compressed on. So it'll be a manual load. But then how does Spider-Man put his web shooters in his hands anyway? I bet he has to do it manually. Right. So that's a spring. The thing fits in there. Then there's another servo that pushes it up and out, off shoots the spring. And I'm hoping that will carry a line behind it to actually shoot a web out. It's pretty powerful when it's all coiled up. So obviously there's a servo in there. That's on a pivot. Hinges up. So we've got some more gears as well, which are for the rotational axis. So we've got 3 servos in this hand. So the plan is his hand's facing inwards. And when I activate a button, it turns it. So it's facing that way. And he does his web shooter, and then the thing pops up and the web shoots out. So that is the episode is all about this one hand, which I'm still trying to make work, or at least I've got the pieces and the pivot points, but I haven't tried it yet. So that's what's happening with that. The other hand might do something similar. I don't think I'll have a web shooter. I fancied having a little drone that flies out, or some other feature. But that'll be for another entire episode, or one about doing some simpler cosmetics and just a thing that opens and a drone flies out or something. It could be another web shooter or another type of web shooter, but I haven't really decided yet. So I'm just concentrating on making one that's really good, basically, for the next episode. And obviously that'll be integrated in the control system, so you'll be able to move the arm around and kind of aim where you want to fire it, and then do the thing and the sequence, and the web will shoot out. So you can almost hopefully aim at targets and shoot them by moving the arms with that joystick and then press a button to fire. So all of that should hopefully be rolled into the next episode, provided it all goes according to plan. So that's the update on that, provided it works the way I think it should, hopefully. All right. So I wanted to also talk about some, actually, let's see if there's any questions. Yes, silly string is one of the ways to do it, but I don't really want to use silly string because that's the obvious answer, and silly string is annoying and messy to clean up and flammable. Yes, obviously the spring will shoot out and could hit someone in the face and all of that, but we'll just have to be careful. Good. I wanted to talk about the 3D printers. So I've had actually a couple of questions from different people, at least, or maybe 3, about how do I manage my printers. So I now have the following 3D printers. The Lulzbot AO101 I had originally, which I purchased from Lulzbot long before they supported the channel, which I've still got, but I don't actually use. I sometimes lend it to people if they're interested in getting into 3D printing. I then have a TAS3, a TAS4, and a TAS5, which have all been upgraded to PEI with an all-metal hot end and the Flexi dual extruder that normally goes on one of the 4s when I want to print big NinjaFlex things or hybrid prints. I also currently have 3 TAS6s, but 2 of them have more extruders, and those are sponsored for the largest 3D printed sculpture of a human project. And I don't know if I've got to give them back afterwards or not. I then have a Lulzbot Mini with, which is a dedicated NinjaFlex printer with a Flexi extruder on, and another 2 Lulzbot Minis which are unmodified. So I think that makes 10 altogether. So the question has come up as how do I manage all these printers? And basically there's no system. I juggle SD cards and I just manually juggle filaments, and I have a cupboard with ABS on one side and PLA on the other, and some more on the floor, and ends of rolls on another place on the floor, and whatever. And I just basically think about what needs to be printed, which is the most suitable printer. For instance, all 3 TAS6s have the Moore extruder fitted at the moment because I've been doing these wheels. So the Spider-Man bits have been produced on the 3, the 4, or the 5, and whatever else is going on. And I just basically slice for that printer and go and bring the SD card up, put it in, put the G-code on, go back down, heat it up, put the filament in, and print it. The Lulzbot Minis have Octoprint because they have no front panel, so they've all got Raspberry Pis with Octopins on them, which is a web interface, so I can control them from up here, but still I have to go down and look at the prints and take the prints off and so on and so forth. So that's basically it. There's not really much to it. I did a 360 kind of workshop tour, which shows the room they're in. They don't all fit in that room anymore, so I could probably do with some better racking or something, but we'll see if I keep the other 2 TAS6s for a big print thing. I'm going to be at the TCT show at Birmingham NEC in September, which is, with Lulzbot, it's 3 days this year actually, which is the Tuesday the 26th of September through Thursday the 28th of September. So I'll hopefully be there with the Lego skateboard and maybe the Batboard with its Moore extruder wheels. So if I have enough things to print with the Moore extruder, I expect they'll probably let me keep the printers and keep printing big things, which sort of showcase the strength in there and all of that stuff. So we'll see how that goes. At that point, I'll need to get some proper racking to start stacking printers up. Yeah, so a 3D printer operator, yeah. It'd be good to have an intern or something, but actually it's really awkward because I kind of work in odd hours around the clock, and I still go to Blades Toys to work 2 days a week, which is technically my day job, and you know, it's my house and everything, so it's a bit weird having someone come here to work. ABS to prevent warping. Nothing. The room gets really hot with all those printers in. It gets to over 30 degrees Celsius. I haven't had too many problems as long as the printer's stuck down. They've got big heat beds. So ABS, I've always printed historically. All of Ultron is ABS. There are a few warpage issues, but you know, it's not too bad on the whole. All of it's ABS because you can solvent weld it with acetone. That's mainly the reason I did that. In the olden days, it was much harder to print PLA because you needed fans on the hot end to do overhangs and bridging and stop heat creep where the heat rises up and melts the filaments in the extruder because it's quite a low melting point. These, of course, are PLA because of the warpage. I don't think I could print with a Moore extruder anything really substantial in ABS because it does just warp because the extrusions are so fat. There's so much stress across it. So PLA, you know, it's got really good layer bonding. It's harder and more rigid than ABS. So as long as I don't get it too hot, like I don't leave it for a day in a hot car, and even then I think a big chunk like that would probably be okay. So it's like the little things like sat-nav mounts that tend to melt on people's dashboards in PLA. In fact, PLA is quite a good material, so I don't think I could print these hubs in ABS unless I did them in really thin sections and aligned them all with pins and tried to build them up so there wasn't so much to warp. So yeah, PETG is the other thing I need to do more of. I haven't really tried much apart from Toulmin T-glass, but that's a possibility as well. Otherwise, I'll be sticking to PLA for these big parts. And in fact, the Spider-Man parts, all the armor, the head, is PLA, the cosmetic parts, and that hand is PLA. It's just much easier to print, really. The rest of the functional parts on there are either ColorFab HT or ABS on the robot. So there we go. That's about it for 3D printing. There's not too much more to say about any kind of coordination system. I just have to kind of plan ahead about parts I need to print and make sure I print them in time. So there we go. So those are the events I mentioned there, Maker Faire in Hanover and TCT in the UK at Birmingham NEC, that is. I'm also going to be at another event, which is yet to be publicly announced, which is in London again. It's the Hackaday Uni Conference, which the article is due to go up on Hackaday this week. It's actually a free event. It's on Saturday, the 16th of September at Canada Water Culture Space, Surrey Quays, which is basically near Canary Wharf and out that way. And it's a free event because it's sponsored by RS Components, or more accurately, Design Spark, which is the innovation arm of RS Components. And the only conditions of going there are that you have to give at least a 7-minute talk. Every single attendee has to do a 7-minute talk. So places are limited. Watch out on Hackaday this week to get your free ticket if you want to be there. And I will be there doing my talk as well, hopefully doing maybe a longer one than 7 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. So yes, so I just got another question that's just come through Patreon messages saying, am I moving to a larger studio? It looks like I'm running out of room, and I very much am. Yes, this is the upstairs of my house, and it's really good working from home because I'm at home already. I don't have to go anywhere, which means I can run printers through the night. I can, just quickly go and do something or start off a print, or I can just have a quick idea and think about something or sketch something or come up here or just have a quick look at that switch that I was going to put on there and think about how it's going to be mounted, and I don't have the stuff remotely anywhere. The long-term plan is I don't know what the long-term plan is. There's quite a lot of stuff, I guess, putting some in storage if I don't want it. But things like the Exosuit Mark 1 is going to get broken down and the parts moved to, or the parts that get used at least, move to Exosuit Mark 2. And that will be an ongoing development thing. So I'm trying to kind of have projects that are ongoing. Obviously, the hoverbike is going to go to Portsmouth Uni. Ultron will just stay there. It'll be okay in the end. My lounge is full of BB-8s and the droids. Couple of those were lent to someone as a lounge decoration, but they're now back, so I'll try and maybe find another home for those. So it's all right as long as I can move. But yeah, the long-term plan, I don't know what's going to happen with all of the things. We'll just put them on display all over the walls until I can't move anymore. I guess getting rid of something. I was printing a bigger house isn't a terrible idea, so I think that maybe I could print an outbuilding, although I don't have much land to put it on. I guess the long-term plan is I'll move house and get a house with, like my old house with a garden and the shed. Which, if you look back in my YouTube channel a very long way, I had quite a big shed, but even that will fill up, of course. But it would be good to have an outside workshop where I can cut steel and everything without having to do it in the kitchen. Right. PETG is strong, yes. I need to look at PETG some more. But at the moment, I've got loads of cheap PLA that I bought, so here we go. Do you burn out parts on your printers much? No, I've only ever in all of history burnt out one heater resistor in the hot end of a printer which had the old Buddish nozzle on, and it was actually I think it was a 5 ohm resistor they used for heating the end. Now they use a dedicated or proper heater cartridge, which is designed to get hot, and those have never burnt out. Nothing else has gone wrong. I've only ever printed one replacement part, which was on the same old, it was on the AO101, which was the extruder gear, where the extruder, the filament got caught and it jammed and the gear broke. The others have been absolutely fine. I've never had to replace any pieces on any of them, and they do a lot of printing. So there we go. An underground bunker like Colin Furze. Yeah, again, I don't have really a place to put it. I don't think I can dig up the land. There's like a little garden at my house. I think I can't dig down really because it would undermine the house and it would all fall into the hole. I don't have a big garden like Colin. He lives in the north of England where property's cheaper, so he's got this long garden, and the nuclear bunker's right at the other end, away from all the houses, so nothing fell into the hole when he dug it. It's very cold down there as well, and there's no phone signal. It'll be nice though, but not in this house, maybe in another house. I think the plan would be to drop a 40-foot container into the ground, or 2 40-foot containers, and that'd be it. And then have a thing down and then concrete over it. Or just put a deck over it. It doesn't even have to be a nuclear bunker with concrete, does it? So yeah, I was thinking about printing a little dome to go on the back of my house, so I can go outside in the rain to cut wood and have it like a half a geodesic dome with some sort of panels. But don't know, really, like a temporary thing I can prop up and kind of bungee onto the house to some hooks or something. Again, in the UK planning rules, if you have a conservatory, it can't be more than a certain amount of length without planning permission, and it has to be more than 60% glass. You can't have running water out there, things like that. So there's a limit to what you can do. And I don't think I get planning permission where I am to have an actual extension or any sort of outbuilding. I could get away with a wooden shed because it's temporary, but there isn't that much space to put it, really. So yeah. Johnny 5 says move up here, which I happen to know is Manchester or thereabouts. So I think if that's the same person, yeah, I could do. Probably be cheaper, but then I could move to Northern Ireland or like Scotland or Plymouth or somewhere down in the southwest. I could have a whole like converted church or something for the price that I pay here, or less. So there we go. My pad looks like a scene from the first Iron Man, Tony's Workshop. Yeah, it's kind of getting that way. I really do need to tidy up, actually. And there are boxes of stuff that I did in my 362. All of the stuff down here, some of this stuff that's down here, I haven't actually looked at for quite some time. I probably should get it all out and decide what I do and don't want. I think a lot of it's kind of from predates 3D printing, so there's lots of useful things. But now I probably just 3D print the part to be exactly right anyway, instead of trying to adapt to whatever I was collecting at the time. Right. Yes, it is Manchester. Good. Right. Could I sell my projects to schools? I'm not sure, really. I don't know if I'd actually want anyone to try and use them because they're quite high maintenance. I mean, Robot X, for instance, is not really a consumer product. It's something only I can operate, really, and it's still quite buggy. And so actually having a finished thing you can sell to someone and say, here's this thing you can use. You know, the Lego skateboard is too fast to be safe, and I'd really want to keep an eye on the wiring, and it's not really that practical to sell the things. You know, I guess it could go into a museum or something like that. Maybe if it was even donated, some of the things could go to a museum, but we'll have to see, really. Hulkbuster, by the way, is going to live at Blades Toys eventually. At the moment, we still don't have space down there, though, so there we go. Is it clean white carpet? Yes. It's sort of beige. There are a few lumps of hot glue in it and the odd paint, drop of paint, but mostly like the black pieces I painted here, I did downstairs on the tiled floor with a lot of newspaper. So I don't do anything too messy up here. It's really just the odd bit of drilling, and then I just vacuum up or have a dust sheet and then collect all the dust and take it away. So it does get dusty. I mean, that's not too bad. A lot of the surfaces get dusty. It's probably clean. If I had somewhere else to store all the stuff and this room was much emptier, it'd be easier, but there we go. It wouldn't be so much fun to look at, would it? So, yes. Right, where are we? So, any more questions? So we're coming up to the hour. Normally these are an hour, although it could be longer if anyone's got anything else. I think I've answered all the questions and I've talked about all the projects pretty much. There is one thing that may or may not happen, which is a big sponsored deal to do a big promo, and it's also a collaboration with other YouTubers that I don't know if it's going ahead or not. If it does, then you know, some of these there'll be some projects dropped for a while I do it before the grand finale, but I can't say anything about it. Hasn't been confirmed. If that doesn't go ahead, then probably I'll do the fighting robots and all the other things and another skateboard. But if that does go ahead, that's going to be quite time consuming. So I'll probably struggle to get my regular Tuesday video out. So that's the only other projects update, really, but that's completely up in the air at the moment. So there we go. Oh, yeah, sorry, the Hot Wheels project. I can talk about that. So yes, as I mentioned last time that for Blades Toys we have acquired the license for Hot Wheels, which is owned by Mattel. Mattel are quite big now. As obviously Mattel and Hasbro are the biggest toy companies in the world, so they license out the Hot Wheels brand and Barbie and others to and Thomas the Tank Engine to companies to make toys. So Blades Toys has got the I think it's European wide, it might go US wide, to make the Hot Wheels flying toys, and we've got a product coming out called which is obviously public now. It's on the Blades Toys Facebook page, and if I can find it, I'll show you a quick picture so we know what we're talking about. My hard drive's powered down. Give me a moment. Let me just share my screen again. Well, there it is. The RC Hot Wheels Drone Racers, which is basically a Hot Wheels car with a quadcopter that fits on top. It's radio controlled, so you drive around down Hot Wheels track or wherever you want, or you can skid steer on carpet. It works pretty well. It's a pretty powerful little drone. Obviously, the wheel width is the width of Hot Wheels track, or you take the drone off and then you can fly it like a quadcopter. But it's aimed at 8+, which is why it's got the car, because it's really much easier than flying a quadcopter. It's already won Best Action Toy from the British Toys and Hobbies Association this year at Toy Fair London, and it's being made now. We've got the first production boxed whole finished versions in the office, and it's going to be in the shops hopefully by next month, including all good retailers, including Tesco, and I think Maplin are taking it, and also Halfords, which is a car accessory shop, which is a bit unusual, but there we go. Right, so it's going to be quite good. It's going to be definitely available for Christmas and quite popular. So Blades Toys have asked me to make a life-sized one, which is going to be used for a promo, and it's going to be going through London in November for the Hamleys Parade, where they shut Regent Street and SpongeBob SquarePants and double-decker buses and things go down the road. So that's going really well. I'm only there 2 days a week, but I have an intern helping me, and we are building the thing. In fact, I don't know if I can show you. I think that no one's supposed to see it, but it's basically 6 feet long. Its wheels are 16 inches and the rotors are 30 inches. We're basically scaling up, 3D printing some stuff with more extruders, but the rest is handmade out of plywood, aluminium extrusion, bits and pieces. It's got 2 brushless motors in it. So basically, after the skateboard worked, I knew that was going to work, but they're more powerful, higher torque, slower ones. It's going to be, the theoretical top speed is 44 miles an hour, but it probably won't do that. But obviously it has to have motorized steering and a motorized back axle, because you can't skid steer down Regent Street with massive rotors, because it'll be ridiculous. So I can't really, I don't think I can show you the progress, but that'll be in my channel eventually. So it'll be 2-part build and the grand finale. Then the MD wants to take it out to like Silverstone and do a speed trial and stuff. So there'll be more on that. Obviously that's paid for by Blades Toys. It's not billed to patrons. I just get the videos, which is great. And it's all, you know, sponsored by Blades Toys, if you like, and the Hot Wheels brand, so that should be quite good. There we go. More about the fight bots. I don't really have any more about the fight bots because you know, it's kind of a project that's ready to kick off if I don't have anything else to do. So there we go. I'll decide as I go, as usual. Have I been tempted to get a small and for wood and metal side of manufacturing? I'm not sure what it is that we're looking at. A small lathe, perhaps? I was thinking about 3D printing a lathe for some stuff. I don't do that much in, or maybe it's a router or CNC machine. It'll be good, but obviously cutting wood and everything makes a mess. So I tend to use this box section. In fact, for the backboard, I actually cut that with a hacksaw because it's less messy than the angle grinder. So, but I will, of course, cut the tricky parts of an angle grinder and then open them up, hopefully. But yeah, more wood and metal stuff would be good, but I really need a shed for it. So there. Yes, CNC, right, sorry, just seen that message. Yeah, that'll be lovely. It's just noisy and messy and extraction and all of that. So we'll see what most of the stuff I can do with 3D printing. They're like Tallman alloy nylons, getting on for the strength of machined aluminium anyway. So, you know, The world record human print, the filament sponsor had manufacturing issues and hasn't delivered the filament. So that was arranged through 3D Filaprint, but now 3D Filaprint themselves are sponsoring it with their own premium, whatever they call it, filament. So that's arriving next week. So I'll be starting that print next week on the 2 TAS 6s with more Struders. Yes, I could build my own CNC, but I would still need a place to put it that I can run a router. That really looks good on a full-scale machine, car on the bottom, copter on the top. Oh yes, the drone racer, yeah. So it's going to be, yeah, it's 6 feet long and 6 feet wide and about sort of a meter tall or something. But the rotors will spin and they've got quite high power motors in. The motors I'm putting in the rotors are the same as the skateboard motor. So they will definitely spin and it will feel like air's being pushed. They're actually off-the-shelf 30-inch drone rotors, which you can buy. That's the biggest I found though. So yeah, it'll look the part for the promo. There we go. The mobile bandsaw clamped to a vise. Yeah, I'd like a bandsaw as well, and lots of tools. All these tools exist down at the Makerspace actually, so I could go down there. There's lots of experienced people, sort of older guys who've retired, who've worked in machine shops for 40 or 50 years or whatever, and you know, if I needed to get stuff welded, I could go down there and get it done. But I'd like to do stuff that's, you know, this kind of plywood, box section steel, and 3D prints and bolts. It's quite a good way to make stuff with a whole, you know, the good structure and the tricky parts are 3D printed for bearing blocks and all that. It's quite a good hybrid kind of system, all the way wood through metal through 3D printing with the electronics on top. So it's quite diverse. I can quickly kind of almost prototype or build up these things. So that's the plan for the exosuit as well, just because it's kind of quick and easy and I can do it at home. I don't like to have to go somewhere else to get a specific piece made, to be honest, because I can get more content made. Yes, I'm still a trustee of So Make It, the Southampton Makerspace. I was exhibiting with other members of So Make It at Winchester Science Festival. I put an Instagram picture up where I had the Lego skateboard and a video of it working. I still go there every Tuesday evening, and I'm still a trustee, which means I'm a director of the company. So, yeah, very much involved with So Make It. Obviously, my time's quite tight, but I still try and get down there every week. So, and mainly spend my time talking to other people and helping other people with their projects. Don't do much of my own stuff there and haven't done for ages. But I could go down there and use the tools and cut some wood. But basically, I've got a table saw in the understairs cupboard and a jigsaw. So it's hardly worth going down there to cut this when I can just do it quickly here. If it was a much bigger project, I might consider it, but a lot of the stuff I can just do. So, right, 30-inch per blade, or in total 30-inch per blade. So it's surprising when you got a Hot Wheels car with tiny rotors, and you say, "We'll scale it up by 25 times." You kind of go, "Well, basically, surely it's only this big." But the rotors are probably they must be just over an inch, because when you scale it up, you get 30 inches. So they're huge and they seem terrifying, but once we ordered them and got them, they didn't seem that bad. But yeah, they're available on Hobby King. If you look for the rotors bigger than 11 inches section on Hobby King, you can in fact get up to 30-inch carbon fiber rotors, so we bought those, and they come in pairs of counter rotating for actual drones. So yeah, it's an actual real thing. And yeah, wheels 16 inches is scaled up to. And when I was looking for the wheels, basically the only things that came up on eBay were like wheels for a Nova, which is a UK hatchback car, an actual car, alloys. So in the end, we had to get, well, they had to be yellow. So we've ended up with wheelbarrow wheels and then putting 3D prints in to put wheel bearings in. So yeah, it's been tricky to find those off-the-shelf parts, but the rest is, of course, custom made, so not so bad. Aluminium casting from 3D prints. Yeah, again, I'd like a workshop to melt the aluminium in, not do it on the carpet or wherever. So yeah, there's lots of things. Right, yeah, Fusion 360. I hated it to start with, to be honest, having used 123D. And there's still some buggy things that I don't like. And I actually had someone from Autodesk came to my house for a day and sat down and we went through these things, and some places it crashed on just trying to draw a sketch on a specific plane. And basically the answer was, you know, it's an ongoing development. And yes, you can do it this way, but you have to do this and remove the constraint and then do this and now do this, and then you can do it. So in some ways, 123D had those problems fixed over the years, and now it's like we've gone back. But actually, there's so much more functionality in Fusion. Once you get into the mindset of using it, it's actually much quicker now. If I go back to 123D on a machine down at SoMakeIt or something and have to do something, it's like, oh, where are the controls? So yeah, Fusion's the answer. It's free to enthusiasts and startups. All you have to do is take out the trial and at the end say you're an enthusiast, and then it's free. No questions asked. So it basically does a lot of stuff. It will also control CNC machines, or at least generate the G-code. There's lots of manufacturing, the sheet metal stuff for making things that fold out of flat sections. So there's quite a lot of things that we can use there for potentially cosplays of unfolding, a bit like Pepakura Designer. There's a plugin called Exact Flat that we're in fact using for the body of the drone racer to unfold the CAD to make all the panels. Our intern Paul has had a fun job of making that out of foam PVC board with 3D printed brackets on the inside and gluing it all together. So yeah, it's much better than 123D. I can kind of understand why they've consolidated into one kind of product that everyone can use, but picking it up from having never used CAD before, it's probably going to be a lot harder. So I don't know how much that's going to knock accessibility. There is still Tinkercad, but of course that runs in a web browser. So if you don't have ready internet access, that becomes an issue. So, but personally, I think it's all right getting used to it. Yeah, sometimes confusion, absolutely. I do shout at the screen, but I probably shouted at the screen a lot when I was using 123D. So there we go. Is a love-hate relationship, but I now use it, obviously using it every day for everything, and getting used to the way it wants you to do it and which piece you need to draw, do the sketch, draw, plane, whatever. Do it the right way round, kind of, you get into that mindset. There we go. Baby runner wheels. What's a baby runner? Is that a pram or a pushchair? So a stroller? Yes. So getting bright yellow wheels was the challenge. But for the obviously for the backboard, making your own custom wheels, even if it takes, I think these were 12-hour prints or something, so it's not too bad. The Ninja Flex tires, I know they're going to be like 30 each, and they were for the skateboard. But I had to get the tire thickness exactly right on that. So to get the thing to be spaced exactly off the ground, the right amount to make the board level and stick to the size of the Lego, what was the gear that I took the gear teeth on and put the tire on, to get the right spacing for the bricks, to get the axle at the right height, so the board's level with the skateboard trucks on the piece of plywood on the bottom of the other bricks, that the thickness they are. Trying to find a wheel the right size is impossible, so basically 3D printing the hub and 3D printing the tire, which is why this tire is so thick to make up the distance, but without ruining the hub, so it's still a piece of Lego. Obviously, you can't really just buy a wheel the size you want exactly, so having the custom-made tires in 30 hours was the best option. Again, the backboard, trying to find those kind of wide double-tired wheels. So I could have bought wheels that are slightly skinnier and put two on there, but then attaching them together so one doesn't freewheel, and getting the pulley on, and them being exactly the right size. In the end, well, the cost of them would have been more than the filament, with bearings in, and then something mechanically to couple them, and then putting the pulley on. So it's just, in the end, I'll just print it and make the bearings fit, and print the tire exactly how I want, which is custom designed, so the overhangs work and everything. There we go. Yes, right. Are you going to use L brackets to stiffen the front suspension? There isn't any suspension. It's just going to be as rigid as possible, and hopefully, if I just sandwich all this steel between the plywood and bolt through all four pieces, hopefully this doesn't twist. Obviously, that's got to rotate. So I'm going to try and maybe make a piece of steel that goes round. We'll see what happens once I've cut the inside of. Can't see what I'm pointing at. Once I've cut the inside of this and opened it out to get the bolt in, so stub axles they're angled actually at 10 degrees, so the wheels rise as they steer. So that's why your car settles are going straight forward in the middle, because gravity pulls it down. So getting that angle in, I'm going to need a wider piece on the top or the bottom, or whichever way round it goes. So yeah, hopefully opening this out will give me enough distance, and then there'll be an 8mm bolt going through there. I might put another plate on there. We'll see how it goes. There could be more, kind of like another batten or something on the inside to stop this twisting. We'll see how it goes when I stand on it. But yeah. Baby strollers people run with. I'm not sure if I know what that is, but I can imagine. Is there one that attaches to a bike and then you have a baby in it or something? Is that I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so we don't have too many yard sales. We have what's called a car boot sale in the UK, which is basically everyone goes to a car park and opens the back of their boot and in their car and sells stuff. But since eBay's come along, you don't tend to get such good stuff on car boot sales, because anyone who knows anything's worth anything puts it on eBay. So there we go. Right, Robin says he's struggling with Fusion, been doing 2D CAD for CNC. Okay, can't move it across. Yeah, it's a challenging one. The best thing, I guess, is start with 2D sketches and extrude them out and then chamfer corners off and things. But it depends what you're trying to design ultimately, and if you're trying to design mechanical gears and things that work. It's just practice, I guess, and having the application of whatever you're designing. So there we go. But there are, yes, Zach says there are quite a lot of tutorials online about Fusion. I haven't done any myself because I know that I'm not using best practice. The guy from Autodesk was like, wow, your timeline's really long. Apparently you're supposed to activate components, and then the timeline for each component fits into the component, and when you mirror things, then it mirrors the timeline. So when you change the timeline of the original one in that component, it changes the mirror, and your timeline for each thing shorten. You can see what's going on, and lots of stuff that I don't bother with. But yeah, so I'm not probably going to do too many tutorials myself, but there we go. All right, a 3-wheel stroller, 16s on the back and 12.5 on the front. Okay. Basically, the 16-inch wheels are for the Drone Racer, and they had to be yellow, and they had to also, they're supposed to be 100mm wider. They're actually only 60mm wide, I think, so we've got to still put an extension on or put 2 wheels on. But trying to find a wheel that's the same as the Drone Racer, which is quite fat, it's just doesn't exist, obviously. So there we go. But I'm quite happy with the wheelbarrow wheels. I think they weren't too expensive. I think they were £20 each anyway. So that's what we've used, and we might put another couple on the back. But that will be coming up. All right. So if there's, I think I've covered everything. So unless there's, feel free to keep asking questions. But if there aren't any, we'll end shortly. All right. So yeah, I've been trying to do the broadcast within a month of the last one. I think I might have just achieved it this time, but I have got lots of projects to talk about, so that's good. All right, good. All right, I'm just going to hang out on the chat. What I'll do is close the video, but I'll hang out on the chat. Hopefully it still works. So if anyone's got any last minute things, or of course, feel free to message me on Patreon, post on the Patreon wall, or if you haven't got access to the private subreddit, send me your Reddit username and I'll add you in. And that's a forum just for patrons that I give priority to. All right. I'll try and leave the chat open. Hopefully it doesn't end. Okay, thank you and goodbye.